Welcome to the Universal Diner, where life's flavors blend into authentic conversation. Join us at our spacious corner booth as we discuss and explore various topics such as natural health and wellness, yoga, plant medicines, spirituality, and more. There's always room for you, there's always room for our special guests, and there's always room for insight, intuition, and epiphanies to arise. All right, gathered together at the diner again. Let me tell you, that last meal that I had here, sitting alone without your company, even though I had lots of salsas and other spices to distract me from my loneliness, I missed you guys.
Aww.
And Simone, I want to acknowledge that you left some kind of evening event to get here on time. I hope we didn't pull you away from anything too amazing.
No, we were having fun. It was just a small little gathering, and we ended up playing. We had some very deep, rich conversations, and then we played Uno. So that was we had some good laughs and some good, deep conversations. It was actually a really nice evening.
Wonderful. So you moved on from there to another small group where we're probably going to have similar types of conversation, or we're going to at least aspire towards it. And then I guess the only thing missing is we might have to add some Uno to the end of our session. All right. Well, do you still have an appetite after your first and primary group of friends?
I do.
Session?
Well, I'm having dessert now. I'm chewing on some raw mint chocolate.
That sounds awesome, but you know how they frown on the idea of bringing in outside food or beverages into the diner.
Oh, well,
and we're already loud enough.
Sneak this in.
All right. Let me block you. So the waiter can't see it. Hey, great weather we're having. How about those Chiefs? All right, go ahead. Chew fast.
Mm-hmm.
Brother.
Yes. Hi.
What are you feeling for? What are you hungry for? We know this menu so well, and yet we always peruse it anew.
I'm going to let you guys order today. Surprise me.
The responsibility of that.
Well, Troy, you have good menu karma. We always talk about I have good house karma and you have good menu karma. So you always seem to always pick just the right things off of a menu, any restaurant we go.
Thank you for that. I do seem to have some intuitive abilities with menu. There's a little bit of left brain elements that come into play, but yes, I vibe out menus, especially if I don't know them otherwise. All right. So now the pressure is on me. Well, a couple of ideas come to mind. The idea of spiritual warriorship, the concept, giant plate of spiritual warriorship comes to mind as something we all might be able to partake in and of. And regardless of whether we're feeling it right now or not, and perhaps especially if we aren't feeling it right now, the importance of play and joy and celebration might be a dish, because you're eating dessert right now, Simone. So we could just sit out and order dessert.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a great gratitude, joy, celebration, and ritual. 4 scoops of ice cream. It's the whole thing here. Well, Simone, maybe, yeah, you do. Yeah, you love some of this yummy. Well, Sim, what do you care to present? In other words, perhaps we should start with whatever you have to bring forth in regards to this variety of subjects, these related subjects. Joy, gratitude, celebration, play, the importance of it, your relationship to it.
Yeah, I think we could jump into any one of those and see where it goes. Well, aren't we just sharing in the joy now?
Yes, we are. But again, who knows better about the nature of uninhibited play and gratitude than a woman in her power, a woman in her feminine. For that matter, anyone in their feminine. But
I was just going to say, isn't it? I don't know that it has anything to do with gender.
All right. Well, damn it. I'll just start playing then.
Yes, go for it.
You're not going to play with me. I'll just play over here in the corner. All right. Play and delight is very, very important in our lives. It's extremely necessary to cut loose and just let go a little bit. Play and joy and humor as a specific aspect of that is a very highly cherished aspect of my life. It is a medicine often, a medicine that I use regularly, a tonic, an elixir. While my relationship to the concept of humor and play has changed through time, it has always been and continues to be an extremely important part of it. I really honestly don't know how I could make it through life with any degree of quality or connection to it if I wasn't constantly looking for and becoming involved in the levity, the delight, the possibility of making things fun. And again, a primary way that I do it is through humor, either delighting in someone else's or the larger absurdity inherent in a situation, or what I might call self-generated or more accurately channeled humor, because I believe it is a crack in the cosmic egg, a gift from God.
Absolutely. And having known you and been in close relations with you for so many years, that has been an absolute, just delight, to share your humor and many, many laughs, and just your, the way that you, literally channel humor is something that I deeply appreciate and miss a lot when we are not, around each other, because we often have these very far physical distances between us. And that playfulness that you exude and share is something really special.
That's wonderful to hear. Yes, because it's not mine, there's no ego attachment to it. I really honor and cherish it as a gift that comes through me. And we all have gifts that come through us. And that's just one that, has found a route through me into the world. And it is a superpower for anyone that uses it and supports it with their heart and soul rather than using it as a weapon. Of course, whenever it's not used to harm people, it's used in service of the world. I would say that is a good question for all of us to ask ourselves. What brings us joy? What brings levity to our life? What allows us to tune in to other dimensions beyond the heaviness of it and even the deeper meaning of it? Because sometimes that in itself can be heavy. I'm not suggesting I'm an expert here, even as I call myself a practitioner. But again, just to open up the conversation further, and I don't want to limit it to just humor, but that's kind of puts a finer point on it. From very early on, the world seemed to me to be a very absurd place. The things that people put energy into, the priorities that people seem to have, the external structure of the world always seemed cosmically absurd to me, which from a very early age then instilled in me the idea that this is not all there is. This isn't really real. And it's ridiculous to take all of this as seriously as people do. And it started to form this kind of absurdist, surreal relationship with life, for better and worse. Maybe even a little bit of disassociation from it, just because it was so over the top and so weird. But that was a foundational element. And I basically just built on that. Let me give an example, if I may. My mom tells a story about her literally finding my hand in the cookie jar. And then she was scolding me. And instead of taking my hand out of the cookie jar, I just looked at her and started mocking her facial expressions. Like, I think that was a very early stage. Like, really? You want to make a big drama out of this? Okay. Oh, it's horrible. Oh my God. You know? So again, I think I came into the world with a predisposition towards it. And later on, psychedelics did nothing but reinforce that cosmic sense of absurdity and looking at the world from the outside, looking in and going, this is no way to run a planet. Got to be kidding me.
Yeah, they can certainly be helpful to gain some perspective.
There are many metaphors that come to mind. I do like using this crack in the cosmic egg thing in regards to humor, or again, more broadly, levity or play. That is the title of a book that's now, I think, from the 70s even. But it is the thing that lets in the light that illuminates the mediocrity of a situation. And again, our attachment to it. A lot of things don't. It's a way to just immediately bring in that. Another metaphor would be like it's doing a headstand with whatever the situation is, right? If all else fails, you can look at it upside down. And then, of course, the gifts inherent in that, we immediately broaden the situation, at least our own experience of it, right? We're open to multiple angles. We bring forth that to others who can also suddenly expand. It's like a moment of shared consciousness expansion. Right. So everyone has some perspective. Hopefully they can take some joy in it. I mean, again, it's incredibly powerful and usually enjoyable medicine to consume.
Yeah. At the risk of overanalyzing humor.
Which is not funny, by the way. Talking about humor.
Right.
Funny.
But there's always that fine line between like, what, can't take a joke? It's like when humor is used to make an issue less sacred or, and then putting someone else down. So what strikes me is that really the essence of the humor that you're talking about is really aligned with heart, right? Like as opposed to using humor as a kind of as a weapon. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yes, absolutely. It can and often does serve as both sword and shield. And a common way to use it is as such, right? And to minimize one's discomfort with something that is deeper. At the same time, skillfully expressed, it keeps someone, as it were, from going further into a story when that story doesn't serve them. Once somebody has come forth with enough difficult emotions, it's clear they're staying with it, they're processing it. It's just a way to say, don't forget, there's this, and there's this other realm. Don't get lost in the story, even as it's important, perhaps necessary for you to go through, right? The sun always shines. The sun is always shining, and the worst hurricane storm ever, the sun is up there shining away. Hold that to make this journey easier.
Yeah, it's a nice
and
image.
more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm just full of metaphors here. If we can tune into the other person's sense of absurdity, levity, humor, or whatever, and part of that process involves, making space, allowing for that to be shared, then there's significance created between two people, two or more people, obviously, right? And then when that is not present, and yet one has a sense that that person is open to it, or you don't know, and it's a little bit of a risk, but that's part of the fun at making a joke. You never know how it's going to land. That you can be the generator of that. You can put that forth, and that basically sends a signal of like, I'm not taking this too seriously, even as the larger reality that I'm conveying is I hold all of this in reverence. And as part of the way I honor that, it's to keep in mind that there is this cosmic absurdity, or there is this silliness, or that there is at least a bigger story, and it's an invitation for you not to go into it any more than you need to. For me, and as you say, Simone, it is a little bit of a fine line to walk, but it's part of the art and craft of playing with and in life. I want to bring forth the story, and I was kind of playing with it a little bit earlier in the podcast. We actually did see a video of the president of Switzerland several years ago, who was speaking about a new government policy that was aimed at bringing in more humor, more levity into situations and recognizing their health benefits and such. But he was delivering it in the most kind of deadpan, removed, non-humorous, kind of serious way, which on some levels is kind of indicative of the Swiss way of being in the world. And that was just so incredibly funny to hear someone talking about the importance of humor in a completely humorless way. And then knowing Switzerland a little bit through time, especially you, Simone, it just really cracked me up. And
Yes.
still does to this day.
We got a lot of mileage out of that one.
Yes. Levity is very important in our lives to provide joy. Yeah, man, I can see you're living in it right now, brother.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting to look at like different, we've all traveled quite a bit extensively and seen different cultures and lived in different cultures, and just seeing kind of the quality of humor in different nations and countries, and what certain cultures find funny and what other cultures don't, and what, sometimes feel offended by something that is funny in one culture and not the other, and also kind of like the characteristics of humor in different cultures. It's quite curious.
So which culture would you say is the funniest?
Well, I mean, North America, between Canada and the States, certainly has a lot of humor, but then it's all comes in its flavor. Like people in the UK, of course, can be incredibly funny, but it has its own flavor of humor. I wouldn't say that a lot of mainland Europe has all that much humor. And then like in Thailand, there's a certain flavor of humor that seems to be, kind of more slapstick kind of. I mean, I would say I'd probably laughed the most in North American spaces, but then again, this is also our culture. So that's probably also where we are most conditioned to kind of appreciate that type of humor, right? So again, that kind of cultural lens.
What would you say, Troy? I think you're pretty
I've got
funny.
all kinds of things. Right. Here I was fishing for a compliment. No, I have very strong ideas about the nature of humor around the world, but I didn't want to take up too much bandwidth because this is already turning out to be a little bit of the Troy show.
Well, you can get away with it being the Troy show when we're talking about humor. So, I mean,
I see. Well, thank you for being my enablers. Well, I do have lots to share about it, brother, but if you would prefer to go first, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I will launch right in.
Please do. Go.
Okay. Humor around the world. Okay, I will riff on what Simone shared. There are definitely flavors of humor around the world. I would say there are some people who seem to be relatively humorless, but that's not true. Everyone has certain types of humor. It's just a matter of how much of a priority it is, how much it's expressed, the ways it's expressed, etc. So I guess I would say I'm a bit of a connoisseur of humor. I love all humor, all of its expressions. Only when it is used to harm, that's the time I really don't like it. But any other flavor, any other type, it's great. Canada, very known for having people that are very funny. A lot of Canadian comics and such have been very successful, like in Hollywood and all of that. And I see some distinctions between the two countries. Canada, being Canada, the nature of humor is slightly more self-deprecating, a little more kind of dry, a little more like, let's share in the funny. So I'm going to do something that opens things up without pointing fingers. And then I'm going to invite you into like the play. Whereas in America, being America, there's a little more one-upmanship. There's a lot more social critique in it. There's a lot more ferocity in it. I think one of the reasons Canadian comics are so appealing is because they're kind of family friendly. It's good natured humor. It's witty, intelligent, but it's inclusive. That works for people. But, America being America, no safety nets, etc. That's where you get the Bill Hicks and the Robin Williams and the Lenny Bruces. I mean, those really powerful, like provocative critics, that doesn't really come out of the Canadian culture so much. So
well, Samantha Bee is probably an exception, being Canadian, and is very scathing, shall we say, and political and so on. But anyway, I just wanted to throw a woman in there.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry to be so male centric here. But yeah. And then I would say just in general, there is a white and uptight thing. And it's not like Northern Europeans don't have their sense of humor, but it's like a lot more downplayed, darker in a lot of Northern continental Europe. It's a darker form of humor for sure. The English are incredibly witty. They're excellent at being self-deprecating, but also humor is a self-protective mechanism. And I can see how that would arise within the context of that culture. And as you get into Southern realms, people are more open, playful. They're also more inclusive. They like, open expressions of it. Thailand doesn't like sarcasm, for instance, doesn't like anything that would ever make anyone uncomfortable. But as long as everyone can enjoy in it, they like simple kind of slapstick humor, Mr. Bean type stuff that again is simple and everyone can relate to and doesn't try to prove one's superiority or wit or anything else, just playing with life together. And that's a beautiful form.
Well, tour around the world. Any other observations?
Well, I will say the Russians seem humorless, but I know they have their own style of humor deeply buried in there where it's still warm. I know it's cold. And of
course, also noting that these are all broad strokes.
Of course, But as I go around, I try to lead with my heart. I try to tune in that way. Humor is kind of a universal language. And so I kind of get a sense of, how much can we relate in this way and how much we can't. And if so, if we can rather, how do we connect? How open are you? How much to the edge can I go where it's still acceptable? Where do I need to reside? Wherever you smile, that's the part of the bandwidth that I will meet you at. I will meet you there. Mm-hmm. Brother, anything funny to add? I mean, there is the old saying that life is too important to take seriously, and while we're here and it's so difficult and there are big lessons to learn and we need the full breadth and depth of all of our emotions and all possible thought patterns and everything so that we can go in and out of them and learn from them, etc. I think it is dishonoring what I will call the gift of life if we don't do our best to keep in mind that this is simply one of an infinite number of experiences that the part of the all can have. And if I don't try to keep that in mind, then I'm not doing my part as an aspect of the spirit to hold the whole thing together, man. And so to the degree I can, and again, I'm predisposed to it, I'm like, ooh, let's not get too stuck in anything for very long here, man. It's a short ride. Let's make it fun. Let's delight in the little things and, delight even more in the big things and keep space, make comfort zones around the difficulty when the difficulties arise. Otherwise, it's a rough ride.
Yeah, I was actually just reflecting on that, having just spent some time with two friends who are both actually really sitting with some pretty heavy life stuff. One has just ended a marriage due to some pretty full-on stuff, and the other one is surfing the edge of depression. And so we talked about how this is all showing up in life. And as we were talking about these less than fun things in life, we were also able to really pop through and then just have this kind of these light moments, and then have this fun playing Uno together and had a lot of laughs. And just how the beauty of how humor and lightness can weave itself into those moments of challenge and difficulty is here all at the same time, right? It's all just weaving this tapestry of what we call life.
Yeah. And unless we get too specific here about humor and joking and everything, I do want to make sure we keep in mind the larger concept of levity and play. There's just so many little ways that we can make so many little things more playful, more enjoyable. I mean, it can be anything from, I don't know, the simplest things like, I'm going to put this in the wastebasket now, this piece of paper. We can do that as like on one level of consciousness, like, I have to go do this now. I'm working or, something. Or, we can wad the paper up in a little ball and like play shooting a basket, like most people can relate to that or, with any number of things. And I try to work that into like the course of my day as much as possible. And certainly like one way that I feel like I can do that is with living things. I have these beautiful plants just outside my door and I feel like they're my friends. And so when I come or go, no matter what my state of mind is, I say hello to as many of them as I can and I feel their gratitude and they feel mine. And it's this moment of like openness and lightness and play. And like, I know I've got this crazy busy life compared to you, plant. You don't get out much. Hell, I don't get out much. And I know behind all of this, we're just living and it's all love underneath all of it. Thanks for reminding me. And thanks for letting me appreciate you. On my way out the door, back in the door, there's a moment of levity and delight and play. It doesn't have to be there. I could completely ignore the plants. I could think, God, I wish they weren't in the way. I've always got to water them. So it's just a lot of this is about how we're choosing to frame things. It is what it is. And then what are we going to do with it? How are we going to be with it? Stewardship of our mind and emotions.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That's one of the things, as I started out saying earlier, that I really appreciate about you, Troy, is that through that perspective, you remind me at least a lot of having that lighter, playful bent of nature. Because I know my tendency can be to lose touch with the playful sides of life. And we've often said this to each other, that you have this ability to kind of draw that playfulness out. And I appreciate that. And I think that's an important part of life, is to have people in our lives who can kind of draw out the lightness and remind us of how to play.
Thank you. I'm just trying to do my part, figure out what those parts are, and do them as well as I can. And if everyone just did that, the world would be a very different place.
Brother, how is it with having kids? Has that given you reminders of playfulness or levity or?
Kids are very important sources of delight and play. Their essential nature is to indulge in greater freedom than we should allow ourselves. But in some cases, until the age of 2, it is okay if they giggle. I don't think I could ever be the president of Switzerland. Can you imagine me as the president of Switzerland? So can you imagine me as the leader of
You can't even pronounce it.
Really? I can't. I cannot let that word pass my lips. There is this idea of existentialism, right? Like life has no inherent meaning and we make it. And then, of course, there's also this idea, equally interesting, equally accurate, perhaps, that life is full of meaning and purpose. And our job is to inhabit our specific meaning and purpose and express it. And both things may be true. I don't know. But I do know that moment to moment, there's only so much we can do. An inherent part of any meaning and purpose worth its salt is to be kind, to be loving, to be respectful, to support others, to harmonize, and at times to deharmonize. Someone needs to be protected, etc. Right? There's just a way of like living with full presence, stepping up and stepping in. And if you're living for yourself, you're going to be trying to like find what serves you. If you're living for the greater good and the larger whole, it's going to be coming from the inside out. And again, however we express it and all the ways that it can be expressed, right? We can emanate and we can act from our hearts in heartful ways with compassion. And one of the ways that I think that gets expressed is, again, levity, lightness, letting things go. In some cultures, a smile is a wonderful way to communicate. And others, they think you're crazy for smiling at them unless you're good friends or unless there's a good reason for it, right? You find the ways that work, but you also at the same time find ways that are authentic for you, and you proceed accordingly. And it's the art of life. And moment to moment, sometimes we're better at it. Sometimes we're less good at it. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's flowing, but that's part of the process here, right? Hey, we're all here together. Let's take care of each other. Let's have as much fun as we can. Let's provide each other as much comfort as possible when we need to. That is such profound orientation to life. And again, if more people did that more, we would have an entirely different world right in front of our eyes. I know that's not particularly funny, but
I guess I'm just kind of sitting with, like it's a gift you have, and not everybody has that gift. We've talked about this before too. There's those who have humor naturally flowing through them, and then there's the people who appreciate the humor. And it always takes two, right? To self-generate humor when it doesn't naturally flow. It takes someone in the crowd to have that humor streak, that gift.
Yeah, sure. And when we're trying to generate it and we're not feeling it, regardless of our ability to at other times or not, then it's not in the moment. It's not spontaneous. It's not that instant aha moment that I think can be. But yes, clowns need their audience. And as I'm sure we've all experienced, there are a lot of people that are really funny, but they need to be the center of attention. They need to be the one creating humor. Maybe there were times in my life when I was like that more, but I personally at this point, again, because it's not me, I am so happy when someone else plays the role of the humor generator. I love it. I delight in it. I appreciate it. Doesn't have to be me. And when that component of engaging with other people is not present, then it sort of falls on me, and then I'm happy to step into that role, but I don't need to, which I think is a more sophisticated relationship with it than, let's just say, your average stand-up comic has. Not an emotionally balanced or healthy bunch in general. I have spent a little time backstage with them, so I speak from some experience.
Why do you think that is?
Because the things that bring out a significant amount of humor in us are always about suffering and always about tragedy. As they say, a definition of humor is tragedy plus time. So it's a way to try to make some sense of it. It's a way to protect ourselves. It can be a way of fawning, a way of connecting with people. There are a lot of shadow sides to it. But again, when it's fueled by purity, at least for the most part, then it's this wonderful gift. When it's not, then we can just we can cause harm. We can cut people down, and combination of intelligence, wit, biting humor. And again, some cultures I see that's more allowed for, some it's not allowed for at all. And I just find that distasteful, crass, vulgar, harsh, and don't tend to groove with places that because that tendency is expressed in other aspects of society, right? Little tolerance, all of that.
Competitiveness, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. And perfectionism and, unwillingness to take risks, conformity. Sorry to be talking about Northern Europe again, but everything is everywhere. We just have certain tendencies. And believe me, I am not here to promote the American character. I am here amongst many Americans who are either retired or on vacation. And we are a full-on bunch. We are loud and relatively unsophisticated and awkward, and we are an interesting bunch. I tend to see Americans like the rest of the world looks at Americans at this point, from having rolled around the world enough times to actually become a global citizen without needing to get my street cred there. It just kind of happened. And now I'm like, ooh, well, you're an interesting lot.
Well, we can't really talk about humor without mentioning Fish Guy, but is that outing him?
Well, it's difficult to convey Fish Guy over audio only. And you are outing me, but I'll step up. Well, I'm not really stepping. I can't step. I have fins. I'll swim up to the podium here. My name is Gil Fisher, And I am a parrotfish, but I'm a displaced parrotfish because of human encroachment. So I acknowledge I'm a little bitter and angry about it, kind of have an attitude, but I wouldn't have this attitude if people didn't suck so much. Suck. How do you say it? Suck. Thank you. More to come. All right, then.
Yay! Fish guy.
Our first guest here at the Universal
Yes. Finally, we brought in our first guest.
Right. I'm glad it's a non-human.
Yes, totally. I find that's very, very fitting for
Yes.
our little gathering here, that we'd have a non-human as our first guest.
Yes. Even if it's a bitter, jaded human whose scales have been ruffled. Oh, is that mixing metaphors?
Yeah.
Well, on that note, it is great to be back together with you guys at the diner, and I'm so happy that we have this time together. It's really precious. I cherish it. I know you do too. Thank you all out there in the larger Universal Diner for being with us, for sharing in this journey with us. Our hearts are open to you. Our hearts, I can say it. Our hearts are open to you. Our hearts go out to you. And we'll see you again very soon.
Are you going to stop the recording now or what, Mr. Engineer?
All right.